Good morning. Welcome to the webinar, Moving Forward Together, Navigating the New DBE Interim Final Rule for Prime Contractors. It's a pleasure to be here today to present to you on the IFR and the NC Department of Transportation's role in the process. Hello, Prime Contractors. Thank you for taking the time out of your very busy schedules to join us today. We know that navigating the new interim final rule, or as we refer to IFR, is something that we're getting a lot of questions about and something you would like to know more about. I am Tanya Smith, and I serve as the director for the NCDOT Office of Civil Rights, and also I serve as the State of North Carolina DBE Liaison Officer, which is an official designation to oversee the state's DBE program. The purpose and goal of today's session is to share updates on the DBE Interim Final Rule. Sometimes we'll just say IFR, the abbreviation of that, but the goal is to reaffirm our commitment to the DBE community. Key updates we are going to share will be how states are approaching the process in several ways, additional guidance that's coming from USDOT. However, with the additional guidance, there is no confirmed date for release. This is why it's important that NCDOT is deliberate in its approach to implementation and reevaluation. This is a very fluid process, and as more information becomes available, we'll be sure to share with you. USDOT has not established a timetable for review and evaluation. Some states have established timetables. However, none have established a review methodology. Other aspects of the process need to be completed before the reevaluation process can begin. We encourage all firms to work across the spectrum. As a keynote for today, this session is being recorded and will be shared with you after the webinar. At this time, I would like to welcome our first presenter, Ms. Kim Collins. Kim serves as a practice consultant and advisor with HNTB. Kim will set the stage for us by providing the history of the Disadvantaged Business Enterprise Program, an overview of the interim final rule, the historical context and legal challenges, and highlighting our roles and responsibilities. Welcome, Kim.
So good morning, Tanya, and I hope everybody can hear me okay. Cerise, can you give me a thumbs up if I'm coming across clearly?
We can hear you clearly.
Okay, that sounds great. Thank you. So as Director Smith just mentioned, I am with HNTB and part of this team, and really glad to have the opportunity to speak to the group today. I'm going to spend the next few minutes talking a little bit about both the background of the DBE program, but then also introduce the final rule and some of the most significant changes that we're seeing in the interim final rule that was released on October 3rd. So, excuse me. With that, I'll dive right in. Let me start off by saying that, we tend to use the phrasing of the DBE program, even in the context of referring to both the DBE program and the ACDBE program. So if I miss the ACDBE piece in talking about this, please know that these changes apply equally to the DBE and ACDBE program. This interim final rule went into effect as of October 3rd. They were announced on September 30th. So we first had notice of them on September 30th. and just a matter of days later, they went into effect. So I also want to say that it's important that we realize that things are very fluid. The conversation is changing, and all of the states and their certification, um, uh, unified certification programs are working through and trying to sort through exactly how this is going to, how to apply the new rule. So let's go ahead and dive into it. This, excuse me, this first slide that you see here, I apologize, I'm feeling a little congested this morning, change of seasons. Um, uh, so here's a look at the timeline, giving a little bit of focus to the history of the DBE program and background. So the DBE and AC DBE program dates back to the early 1980s when it was first incorporated into law. The DBE program was enacted by the U.S. Congress for the first time in the Surface Transportation Assistance Act of 1982. So as you can see on the timeline, Congress continued to keep the program active with each of the 7 subsequent reauthorizations. And most recently in the 2021 reauthorization of the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, also referred to as IIJA. So, of course, over the last 4 decades, the DBE program has been the subject of litigation a number of times. We've included on this timeline the 2023 Mid-America Milling case, also known as MAMCO. This is still an active case, and many of you, I'm sure, are familiar with it. It is challenging the DBE program's presumption of disadvantaged based on race and gender. And it's challenging that as being unconstitutional. So this case is still active. It was filed in the U.S. District Court of the Eastern District of Kentucky, and that court is still considering the matter. And we are in a space now in terms of the legal proceedings of where we're anticipating a decision as the court is considering this matter. So that brings us to the US DOT's interim final rule. Again, that was effective on October 3rd. Next slide. So what are some of those key changes that are part of the IFR? Well, first, it eliminates the presumptions of disadvantage based on race and gender. So this means that a person is no longer considered socially and economically disadvantaged because they belong to a certain racial group or because of their gender. This is no longer a factor in determining the business owner's eligibility. Secondly, it removes references to race-conscious or race-neutral aspects of the program. So that language, again, has been removed in its entirety from the DBE program. Thirdly, the IFR redefines what it means to be socially and economically disadvantaged. This new definition is based on an individual's lived experiences. Next, it requires individual business owners to actually demonstrate that they're socially and economically disadvantaged. And they will do this by providing a statement, what is referred to as a personal narrative that states how the business or how the business owner is able to, again, meet this new standard. No more group designations based on race and gender. Next, it requires reevaluation of all of the ACDBE and DBE firms. That means that the North Carolina DOT and the certifying agencies will need to review all of the DBEs and ACDBEs to ensure that they meet this new certification standard. And that process is being referred to as the reevaluation. And so in practical terms, for the firms that are in the North Carolina DBE directory, all of those firms will need to be reviewed in order to ensure that they meet the new certification standard. So a few things to note. I mentioned earlier that there's a fair amount of confusion out there about exactly how the new program applies. How do we go about implementing it? Certainly DBEs have questions about, a personal narrative and how do they begin to document how it is that they meet this social disadvantage standard. Um, the 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 other piece is that the DBE program and ACDBE programs are administered at the state level. And so what that means is that each state will be responsible for um, administering the program, determining how it is that DBEs in their state meet the standard, how they'll go about evaluating them. And as you can imagine, there's a fair amount of latitude there, and every state might not be applying the program in exactly the same way. So based on that, we fully anticipate that there will be more information and guidance forthcoming from the USDOT. And we understand that that is the case, but as the OCR director Smith mentioned already this morning, we don't know exactly when that's going to come. And so there's lots more questions out there than there are answers at this time. Having said all that, though, there are some roles and responsibilities for the DBEs and for NCDOT, and then also what we're looking for from the USDOT. And so we do want to highlight that. Our DBE community will be responsible to prepare the personal narrative statement and to demonstrate social disadvantage. They'll also need to update their personal net worth statement. That, of course, is how they demonstrate the economic disadvantage aspect of the program. And when NCDOT is ready in terms of this process, they will be asked to submit those to the NCDOT. The NCDOT also has responsibilities in this mix, right? So we'll be responsible to develop an evaluation methodology, as well as updating the DBE plan. And that's information that will ultimately be submitted to the USDOT. And as part of this, of course, wanting to provide opportunity for public notice and public comment on these changes. Also, we'll be continuing to look to the USDOT, seeking additional guidance on the new rules and how it is that the states should be implementing them. They'll get an updated DBE plan again that we'll also look for their approval on. And all of this will be necessary in order for us to get to that point where we are able to resume some of the suspended activities of the program. And we'll hear more about that through today's presentation in terms of what aspects of the program are being paused during this time. And one more slide here then that we'll want to talk about. Ken, if you can go to the next slide, please. With regards to interstate certification, because we know that we do have lots of DBEs that actually participate in the DBE program in more than one state. So how are they impacted by this? Well, so if a DBE, a DBE must be certified in their home state. That's a phrase that's kind of interchangeable, if you will, with the phrase jurisdiction of original certification. So they must first seek certification there. Then the next step is that they would reapply separately with the other jurisdictions that they want to be certified in. Again, we are awaiting further guidance, more information from the USDOT on exactly how it is that they want to see the interstate certification program aspects of the DBE and ACDBE programs implemented. So I think that concludes my section for today. Um, I think before I hand it over, I'll just mention again, all the states are trying to navigate this. We have seen some states that are, further along in a process in which they're making certain decisions, moving things forward. But we know that ultimately it will be important for us to have consistency across the states, and that's really going to be important to the DBEs that participate in the program, as well as to our prime contractors. So again, really looking forward to getting some additional information and insight about how we should be administering the program and what the USDOT wants to see. But we also know that there's other aspects of the IFR that NCDOT will be working on and preparing to submit that to our federal partners as well. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn things over to OCR Director Smith. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. Thank you for a very informative presentation, very concise. As Kim said, yes, this is a very fluid process. Just to want to remind everyone, I'll say that over and over again, we are still waiting for additional guidance from USDOT. We have been informed that that guidance will be coming soon, though we don't know exactly when. So we are having a very measured and thought out approach so that we give you all the best and accurate information. So part of my section is I'll discuss with you NCDOT as the UCP certifying authority. NCDOT is authorized to make DBE certification decisions. What does that mean? In North Carolina, we are the only UCP certifying authority in the state. That does look different in other states, but in our state, we are the one-stop shopping place for everything for the DBE program with certifications and supportive services and oversight. In our state, we have approximately, or I should say exactly, 72 airports. We have 58 transits and over 300 plus local municipalities. NCDOT leads the interim final rule implementation process, including document review, financial analysis, and eligibility determinations. Our local jurisdictions set their own goals and handle contract administration. But again, the NCDOT is the certifying authority and it will be the entity to make the decisions for certifications. We will certainly have some additional sessions with our authorities, our transits, and our airports and our municipalities to get their input and to seek collaboration to make sure we are making good, sound decisions and how we apply and come up with the methodology. But again, that's all subject to review and approval from USDOT. The NCDOT DBE program status. This is important to know. The DBE program has not ended. The following are suspended until USDOT approves the implementation plan and NCDOT completes the reevaluation of certified DBEs. Well, what do we need to do? So setting new DBE program goals, setting contract goals, counting DBE participation, and commercial useful function reviews. Those at this time are suspended until, again, we reevaluate the firms and apply the new methodology. Next slide. Okay, interim final rule correspondence. Well, what have we communicated to the public? On October 3rd, the USDOT interim final rule goes into effect. We didn't have much time to prepare for that. We found out probably about a day before that this would happen, but it took effect immediately. So that was a little different for us in that we had to actually read the entire rule and interpret the entire rule. On October 6th, NCDOT correspondence was sent out regarding the interim final rule with the preliminary assessment of what NCDOT needed to do and to ensure we were in compliance and alignment with the IFR. Then on October 9th, I sent a correspondence to the NCDOT DBE firms to alert them of the interim final rule and to make them aware of the guidance that was sent out from both NCDOT and USDOT. On October 24th, USDOT issued their initial FAQ document because there were so many questions coming from states on how to implement the IFR. We do expect additional guidance, as we've said before, and once we receive the additional guidance, we will incorporate that as well. Then November 2025, November 3rd, USDOT interim final rule, public comment period ends. There was a 30-day public comment, so it started October 3rd, ended November 3rd. On November 16th, final rule implementation. Keep in mind what's true. The USDOT DBE program is still active, right? We are still active. The firms are still listed in our directory. And just for a point of clarification on how many firms we have in our directory, we have approximately 2,499, so we'll say 2,500 certified DBEs, 1,506, where North Carolina is the original jurisdiction. We are only required to reevaluate the firms in our jurisdiction. So that's the roughly 1,500 firms that are certified. Additionally, we have 429 airport concession DBE firms that will also need to be reevaluated. The interim final rule applies to USDOT funded projects. However, keep in mind that our state program mirrors our federal program. So there were impacts to both the federal and the state. What you must do: fulfill all agreements per contract terms and non-discrimination laws. So Title VI is still in effect. Continue fair dealing and good faith efforts, even though DBE goals are suspended. Keep records of outreach and solicitations, subcontractor selection process, payment activity. What's coming next? NCDOT will reevaluate all of our DBEs. If decertified, firms can appeal to USDOT. Update our DBE program plan. Again, we will get our methodology approved by USDOT, and we will work through the appeals process. The timeline for that is unknown at this time, and also the idea happens first before we are able to resume. We do not have that information as of today. Okay. So updated and guidance to help us understand the latest updates and guidance, especially how these changes will affect contracting procedures and DBE participation, which are very important. I am pleased to introduce my colleague from the Division of Highways. Many of you might know him well, Mr. Wiley Jones. Wiley will be discussing what it means for prime contractors and how you can play a critical role in supporting DBEs during this transition. While additional guidance from USDOT is forthcoming, NCDOT is taking a deliberate approach to implementation and reevaluation. All right, take it away, Wiley.
Thank you, Tanya. So I'm going to spend the next few minutes discussing the interim final rule and how it affects the contract administration process. As Tanya had mentioned, we've been revising our contracting processes to ensure they align with the federal requirements. And as always, as we learn more information, we will be glad to share that out to everybody with written guidance. Next slide, please. So this chart breaks down the projects based on the timing, and the key date to remember, as been mentioned before, is October 3rd, 2025, the date that the final rule was published to the Federal Register. So in this first column, we have projects that were awarded and executed prior to October 3rd, or prior to the final rule coming into impact. The second column there is projects that were bid but not executed as of October 3rd. The third column there is projects that were advertised but not bid as of October 3rd. And finally, those projects in the right-hand column, those projects that were being advertised or in the future will be advertised. So you can see, let's focus now on the rows. So the interim final rule indicated that we must have the DBE goals removed from all those projects that were awarded after October 3rd, 2025. So that's those columns 2, 3, and 4. Column 2 is really a small subset of projects. We found probably about 20 or 30 projects, 20 to 30 projects. We still found a few coming out where we are going to have to go in and remove the goals. And we're doing that by a supplemental agreement. Once the contract is executed, our resident engineer staff or our contract administrators are going in and providing a supplemental agreement to remove the contract goals. For the projects that we were able to catch before they went to let, which is that third column over, oftentimes, in most of the cases, we were able to issue an addendum during the advertisement period so that the bidders understood and could receive quotes that they could bid on the project without the goals in mind. And obviously, in future projects, we're not going to include it as well. In columns 2 and in column 3, since there aren't going to be any DBE goals, there won't be any DBE subcontractors, and we're able to work through a lot of those issues. As far as good faith efforts, as was mentioned previously, our resident engineer staff will not be performing any good faith efforts for any of the replacement issues, but we are intending to apply the prompt payment provisions, regardless of DBE certification status or not. Prompt payment will apply on all contracts, and in North Carolina, that's about 7 calendar days. So next slide, please. So when it comes to DBE replacements, again, the October 3rd date plays a good role in this. So all those contracts that were awarded and executed prior to October 3rd, in my mind, I keep these projects as the projects that have been ongoing for quite a bit of time, maybe 6 months in my mind. All the DBE, MBE, WBE, if it's state funded, commitments are to be honored through that process. And if there is a replacement of a committed DBE is necessary for good cause, we're going to follow the contract DBE replacement procedures in that special provision. So that what that means is you will need to get written approval from NCDOT prior to the substitution or termination of that subcontractor. Until the recertification program is done, we won't have any good faith efforts. For those projects that were open but the bids were not executed, that 20 to 30 projects, since the goals are going to be removed, the commitment requirements are also removed on those supplemental agreements. There won't be any replacements necessary. And also for the future projects, with the goals not being required on those, the DBE replacements will not be approved. One thing I did fail to mention that I want to capture. So if a project happened to fall where it was awarded and executed after October 3rd, and there were still goals in there, obviously we're removing it by supplemental agreement, but if there were goals in there and it couldn't be, then we're going to require that contract to be re-advertised without the goals. So that's a even smaller, if something just happened to fall through, we are requiring those to be re-advertised. Next slide, please. Talk a little bit about commercial useful functions. As was mentioned earlier, the CUF, or commercial useful function compliance evaluations, are going to be suspended or paused until further notice. Our resident engineers or our contract administrators will not be performing these reviews, and it also comes into play when we're working with trucking. A lot of times we had many, I don't want to get into weeds here, but we had provisions for hauling and what could count and what could not count and for the commercial useful functions. It's for right now, all of that is being paused. So even prime contractors, you're not going to be required to submit a trucking or a hauling plan at this time as well. Let's go to the next slide, please. So the subcontractor payment tracking system, we are still continuing to track and monitor prompt payments and payments in general. So for NCDOT, prompt payment is required at 7 days upon knowledgeable receipt at all tiers as well. So contractors, prime contractors, you must continue to enter your payments into the subcontract payment tracking system, and the resident engineers or contract administration staff must continue to review and approve them. While the DBE subcontractor payments are required, contractors are encouraged to put all payments in for all subcontractors into the systems. And for those locally administered projects, this is submitted through the DBIS forms to the department. I'll go to the next slide. So alternative delivery contracts. We have design build, express design build, construction manager, general contractor, and progressive design builder are our 4 alternative delivery mechanisms. Mainly design build and express design builder are the lion's share, but we are doing some more CMGC and progressive design builds. Their general guidance is the same as a regular project. It has to do with that date. So if there were commitments made, if you have a design build contract that's been on for more than 6 months or was let prior to October 3rd, 2025, we're business as usual, as the contract required. But on some of those CMGC and progressive design build projects where we had work packages, if the work packages were, or early work package was approved and executed prior to October 3rd, 2025, again, those commitments are still to be honored as well. But for future work packages, those packages that are occurring after the October 3rd, there will not be any goals associated with those, similar to how we are discussing with the other projects, the traditional design bid build projects. One message that I just want to make sure that everybody understands, it's important to remember that we need subcontractors as well. We need the prime contractors. We need you to go out and get assistance from subcontractors to help deliver these projects. Project delivery is very important to us. And please work with everybody to make sure everybody is pre-qualified to work on the projects before. We just had a pre-qualification workshop yesterday. It was very successful here at NCDOT. So just want to reiterate that we appreciate everything you do. We depend on you to deliver our projects, and we're here to help and answer questions as they come in. So I'm actually going to transition over to our next speaker, Ms. Kimberly Pelham-Fennell. Kimberly serves as NCDOT's DBE UCP program manager and will be providing details regarding the path forward. Kim, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Wally. Good morning, everybody, and happy Friday. We are coming in, giving this information because it's guidance that we need to make sure that everybody knows how we're trying to move forward. As everybody's mentioned on here, I know at least once process is fluid and we want to be deliberate. So I want to be deliberate and let you know that the DBE program is not dead and supportive services is still alive, and we're deliberately trying to get you to get those services. Next slide, please. Why contractors should continue to support DBEs? Because DBEs remain eligible and active. No firm has been decertified. Partnering with DBEs strengthens bids and demonstrates commitment to inclusive contracting practices. We're supporting DBE to maintain industry stability during program transitions. We also encourage DBEs to stay engaged and opportunities. So the primes, if you have any DBEs that need additional information or need supportive services, please direct them to our office, because we're here to help them, because we need them, you need them, and we all are part of this big thing to move this forward deliberately to project delivery, as Wiley previously mentioned. Next slide, please. How contractors can continue to support DBEs. I think I've kind of alluded to that in the last slide, but we're sharing upcoming opportunities with DBEs, offer mentorship and technical guidance. We also have technical assistance we can help DBEs with, include DBEs and subcontracting plans out formal goals. We want to let them be in the know and be informed of everything that's going to be able to help them move forward. Promote NCDOT supportive services. We have training, we have bidding assistance, we have technical assistance, we have a calendar of events, we have outreach, and we have events that we're trying to make sure that's out there to the public that will be able to assist them and grow them and be able to prepare to work with you primes. Next slide, please. What contractors can do to support DBEs as we continue to move through this process? Inform all the DBEs of opportunities to support NCDOT. When you see something out on our social media pages, if you see something on pre-qualification, because that's something big that we want to make sure that they are already pre-qualified, make sure you educate them. Continue to stay connected with the DBEs, educate them on what's going on, refer them back to us, stay engaged with us. And for additional communication and guidance, we're here to help not only you, the prime and bidders, but our DBEs and our cross-functional teams as well. Next slide. How are you going to stay connected? We have 6 different things up here. I am Kimberly Pelham-Fennell, and I am the DBE Supportive Services Manager. We have contract and bidding and letting. That's Ron Davenport. Contract administration, Troy Brooks. And we have locally administered projects, that's Marta Matthews. Aviation division, that's Nick Short. And then IMD, that's Brendan. And so we are all here to stay connected with you to help everybody be successful at DOT and move things forward. That's all I have, but I want to introduce to you, as we keep the momentum moving, and thank you for your engagement thus far. We want to make sure that you have a chance to interact with us in this, because we have Tony Crutterfield, who is who serves as the national practice consultant with HNTB. He's want to get some input from you, wants to make sure that we can engage with you and hopefully answer some of your questions and actually gain this information that we're having and gather the data so we can answer the questions on some FAQs that may be coming up. So Tony, I'm going to turn it over to you to engage them for some positive feedback. Thanks so much for your help today.
Thank you, Kimberly. So as Kimberly mentioned, hopefully we know this represents a change. The DBE Interim Final Rule has certainly raised a lot of questions for many stakeholders, including prime contractors and consultants, particularly around the administration of the program during this temporary suspension while the reevaluation process is going on. And hopefully the presentations you've heard today have answered some of your questions, but we know there's many more that simply can't be answered just yet as we're waiting for additional guidance from the USDOT. But the NCDOT is committed to providing as much clarity and updates as they can as they move forward. and really want to know where to prioritize and focus their efforts to address what's remaining on your mind. And so we're going to go through a little interactive exercise here. If we can move to the next slide. Well, first of all, as you registered for this event here today, we did ask you to let us know what was on your mind, what your concerns were. And these were some of the common concerns that came up in those responses, certainly understanding the impact of the interim final rule, how that impacts contracts and opportunities, compliance and goal setting around that, and then just how NCDOT is approaching implementation. Next slide, please. So what we'd like to do is gather your input to understand what still is on your mind. So as I said, NCDOT can focus its efforts on the things that are most important to the greatest number of stakeholders here. I encourage you to bring out your mobile device, scan the QR code, or open a browser on your computer and go to menti.com and then enter that code you see on the screen, 46603920. We'll give this a minute or so to let everybody join the poll. And we'll just have a handful of questions here to kind of get at what's most important to you, what questions still remain. Not that we'll, again, be able to answer them right away, but as further guidance and information comes from USDOT, we'll know how to prioritize things. I'm going to give it another few minutes here. I see there's still a few people joining the poll. Give you all time to do that. Still have a few joining, so give you time. I know it sometimes takes a minute to get another device out or open another browser window. All right, why don't we go ahead and move to the first question? I think getting most folks into this. So the first question here is really going back to those common issues of concern and just asking you to put these in priority order for you, and that may have changed. Maybe some of the answers provided by the presenters earlier in the webinar have resolved those concerns, but maybe they still remain. And so go ahead and just put these in priority order, and we'll see kind of where everybody's at. And there will be a subsequent question here if there's a new topic or a new area of concern, so you'll have that opportunity to answer that after this. So we've got a couple of responses. We'll give this some time as folks are responding. Goal setting and compliance is in the lead now, kind of like watching a horse race. About half the responses, so we'll keep it going for just a little bit here. Again, I would, particularly on goal setting and compliance, certainly refer back to Wiley's comments and the written correspondence issued by NCDOT if there's a need for clarity at the moment, and we'll continue to provide clarity around that. Okay. So certainly things, and this certainly makes sense, right, for prime contractors and consultants, are those things around what are your responsibilities and what is NCDOT going to be doing for compliance and implementing the program as it moves forward. So very good. Let's move to the next question. This will be your opportunity to just, are there other topics or questions on your mind that were not addressed in that list of top concerns that we saw from the registration responses? Just go ahead and enter your answers. We'll start seeing a list of those popped up, and won't necessarily be able to address them on this call, but that's something we'll take back and work with the NCDOT team to address through additional frequently asked questions. Can we refresh? There we go. Starting to pop in here. What can we rely on during bidding? It's a good one. New rules include federal grant programs. If they are grants associated with DOT projects, yes, it depends on what the other federal grants are. If they didn't come through US DOT programs, that would not be covered by the interim final rule. Right, just a couple questions here. So let's go ahead and move to the next polling question. Is the IFR legal? Yeah, well, there are certainly folks asking questions about that. We don't have an answer to that, and there may very well be legal challenges yet to come. So I guess continue to watch for that. Still able to get help when contractor isn't payment at the correct time. Prompt payment issues, if that's what that's related, are those provisions in the contract still apply and need to be enforced, will be enforced by NCDOT. So that is the expectation. All right, let's go to the next question. We will certainly be capturing all your questions that you want to enter there. So what is your biggest concern about the DBE Interim Final Rule? And this is really, we're looking for 1 or 2 word kind of answers, and it will pop up as a kind of a word cloud, I believe. This will just kind of help us understand where most of the stakeholders' minds are on this and the questions in your mind. So go ahead, answer those. I need to refresh the screen here. There we go. Recertification. Compliance, yes. Staying in compliance, yes. Local sources, big companies. Appeal process. Certainly know that those things need to be addressed as the guidance is formulated, the criteria, all those things. But looks like the big thing, and as would be expected, is just how is compliance going to be handled. Certainly, we know you want to be good actors and comply with contract provisions, and so I'm needing clarity around that makes sense. Very good. Why don't we move to the next poll question? Which parts of contract administration during the DBE enforcement suspension, this temporary suspension, are unclear to you? And we may not be able to provide the clarity yet today, but as we move forward, we'll try to focus in more granular detail as to what is still confusing, still uncertain in your mind about how contracts are going to be administered during this suspension period. Again, need to refresh the screen just to start seeing the answers. What is due now? It's a good question. I think is largely addressed that the things that are continuing at the moment are prompt payment, that there's an expectation to continue to honor your subcontracts. But the actual counting of DBE utilization and review of commercial useful function are suspended. So there's not a need for documentation around that. for DBEs, preparing the personal narrative. And at this point, the NCDOT has not started that process or issued the instructions on how to do that. So certainly be thinking about that and gathering information that might support it, but I would not be submitting anything just yet. As was mentioned by Wiley, GFE is the good faith efforts is not going to be done in this interim because goal setting is suspended as well until the reevaluation period is over. Contracts still have a DBE percentage. Contracts that were executed before October 3rd, the DBE goals remain, but the accounting for utilization will be suspended. So your expectation is still honor your subcontracts, but you wouldn't be substituting, replacing DBEs unless you had good cause for it, and then you follow the contract provisions as has been the case all along. Okay, enforcement penalties. It's a good one. I don't know that exactly what those sanctions would be at this point, but we'll make sure that that's addressed if there are any. Okay, very good. Thank you. And again, continue to submit answers if you have other questions. Let's move to the next polling question. What support or guidance do you need from NCDOT during this enforcement suspension? So maybe it's somewhat related to the previous polling question and the things that were still unclear to you, but is there particular support that you as a prime contractor or consultant will need from NCDOT, or you anticipate needing to just help you navigate this time period? Again, we may need to refresh the screen here. There we go. So I want to, maybe Wiley wants to jump in on that, but I certainly think, work with your project managers, construction engineers, and so forth. If you're in the situation where you need to replace a DBE, following the contract provisions to make sure that you're in alignment with NCDOT's expectations. I would just reach out.
There would need to be good cause, but if there was good cause, then replacement is allowed, just like our provisions currently allow.
Thank you, Wiley. Training on the personal narrative. If you are a DBE, there will certainly be guidance and additional workshops that NCDOT intends to have to give you guidance on how to approach that. So just don't have that yet. So continue to have the meetings. It certainly is the intent. NCDOT is committed to communicating with all stakeholders here as they get more information, as additional clarity is available. So. All right. Good questions here and guidance on how to deal with utilization or falling short of the goals, how to treat DBEs, subcontractors, and certification status changes during this period. Again, you have a subcontract for contracts that were already executed and are expected to continue for those terms. So just be mindful of that. All right. Thank you for those responses. Let's move to the next question. What is the preference you have, the types of the format of guidance that would be most effective for you? And we've got a few here, webinars, guidance documents, so, written correspondence like the DOT has already issued, frequently asked questions or other, and the next question will be an opportunity for you to share what other things would be most effective for you. So please put these in rank order for you as to what's most effective so that again, NCDOT can prioritize its efforts. It doesn't mean that they won't do all of these things. It just be how we help them put things out, or maybe in what order and so forth. Certainly webinars is good. Guidance documents as well. So I think that's a helpful reference. Give this just another half minute as people are responding. Certainly understand the value of guidance documents. Just having it in writing is very helpful and a good reference for your compliance and administration of contracts. So very good. Why don't we go to the next question and allow folks to just let us know what other forms of communication and issuance of we go backwards. Maybe it ended up as the same question. Well, if there are other forms of guidance that are helpful to you, certainly reach out and let NCDOT know. There will be a means for regular communication and asking questions and staying up to date that will be announced by NCDOT as we move forward. Well, we appreciate your participation in that exercise. It's a little hard sometimes on webinars to just open up a mic for questions. And so using this Mentimeter was a useful tool, hopefully, for all of us to better understand what's still on your mind and prioritize NCDOT's efforts moving forward to provide more clarity around the interim final rule. So to wrap things up and talk about next steps, I'll turn it back to Tanya Smith.
Thank you, Tony. I appreciate the getting the information from our audience here. This webinar is particularly, we're receiving inquiries from the prime contractors. However, I know that some of you are DBEs that are joined as well. And just to remind you, we have also sent out, or you will receive a link from the DBE webinar that talks about the narratives and some of the other details that we will be sharing. So I do want to assure you, if you were not on the last DBE, for DBE's webinar, that we will send you that information. We will do some trainings on that process. So rest assured, we will have that information coming to you because we know that there's a lot of questions on the process. So just to recap for you, where we are now and a bit of the next steps. So as the UCP, just to remind you, we do have the 72 airports, 58 transits, and over 300 plus local jurisdictions. As our prime contractors, we know that you may have contracts with all of the above, right? Not just with the state. So I do encourage you to also check in if you have an active contract with a transit or an airport doing construction projects, is that as they are managing their own compliance in relation to the contracts. However, it should mirror what the IFR has put out. But I just want to thank you all for joining us today. Your presence and engagement really underscore the strength and the resilience of North Carolina's commitment to supporting our DBE community. I have heard from several of you prime contractors that have reiterated that workforce development and project delivery is so important to you, and having a viable stream of resources and consultants and contractors to work with you is very important to maintaining your presence in your product delivery in our state. At NCDOT, we remain steadfast in walking alongside our DBEs and our primes alike, providing guidance and resources and partnership during this time of transition. As our prime contractors, your insights and your collaboration are essential to our shared goal of moving forward together. We know that you might be receiving calls from some of your subcontractors. Feel free to point them in our direction, as we will be here to support them, and remind them that supportive services are still available. We appreciate your participation in today's interactive exercise, and thank you for completing the questionnaire during registration and the Mentimeter. Your feedback will help shape the strategies that open doors for DBEs and strengthen our transportation industry. As we close, I encourage you to leverage the resources shared today, stay engaged with our team, and continue the conversation. You all are so critical to ensuring the success of our contracting efforts. We encourage you to continue to be good partners and to work with our small businesses, as they are so critical in our state. As a reminder, there are more workshops. We will have lots of workshops on this subject. I'll be meeting with staff on how we're going to review and get their feedback on the process, as well as our UCP partners. Those are all the local jurisdictions, the airports, and the transits. And we will together keep you informed, but we will stay connected with you. If you have any questions or need support, please reach out. Our team is here for you. Thank you again for your leadership and commitment. And most importantly, enjoy the rest of your day. And I wish you well during the Thanksgiving holiday. Take care, everyone.